Hello everyone, happy you could be here. Let's dive in. Sit at My Grave, Season 3, Ego's Death, Chapter 3. Arden had eventually sat on that bench, just on the very end of it, away from the stranger's slop. People had been passing by him on foot and in cars, talking all around, honking, shouting. Thinking on the memory, Arden rolled his eyes at a suitcase. That stupid giraffe was taking up more space than he had. That gift wasn't the only thing the McKinneys left him with. Clayton and Genesis gave him extra money. It wasn't much, just $150. They wanted to make sure he was safe. They rolled the envelope, just in case. And at least their money he could feel okay with having. They were a lot better about him leaving than his family was. Some of it was his fault, but just thinking about any of those exchanges brought him back to a bad place. Finally, as Arden was drifting into his thoughts, the bus rolled up, screeching to a halt at the stop and opening its doors. Arden grabbed his bags and got in, after letting out a deep breath. "Ticket!" He barely stepped foot on the bus when he was already practically getting shouted at. Arden frowned at the agitated face and hands shaking out at him expectantly. With a roll of his eyes, Arden dug his phone out of his pocket, showing his ticket purchase. The bus driver snatched it out of his hand and gave it a glance. He gestured for him to go take a seat after dropping it back into his hand. "Approved," he announced gruffly. "Ugh, so loud and obnoxious," Arden muttered under his breath with an annoyed tone. He began making his way back to his seat, dragging his luggage with him. A few passengers looked up at him, while others continued whatever else they were doing. Arden tried to analyze where it would be best to sit. He wanted a few empty seats for himself and his bags, but there was no such luck. It wasn't too crowded. There were still people scattered around everywhere. "Listen, if you're not seated when I start driving, it's not my fault what happens to you," the bus driver announced. "Let's get a move on, huh? Some of us got a job to get to." Another man spoke out loudly, causing a few others to mutter out their complaints with him. "If you're in that much of a rush, maybe you should have just drove there yourself," Arden mocked quietly as he squeezed himself into a small window seat. Not a lot of room for his luggage, but at least he wasn't close to anyone. "I don't see you in a sports car either. Shut up, brat!" the man yelled back. Arden glanced over in shock. The other man just mimicked his shocked face back at him before scowling. "Got anything else to say?" the man challenged. And Arden didn't speak right away. He scoffed loudly before getting back on his phone. Arden opened his mouth to reply, but the bus driver beat him to it. "Hey, if you guys are gonna fight, you ain't gonna be doing it on my bus. You're not breaking my stuff. Chill out or get off," he scolded. Arden rolled his eyes and took his phone out. Typically, he'd have no issue telling some random idiot what he thought of them. However, after what happened before he left home, his mind felt a bit cloudy still. He was in a cross between being on edge and wanting to react, but also having a desperate need to focus on his task at hand. Although irritated with the noise and clutter of the bus, Arden found himself trying to distract his mind on other things. After he checked his messages again, he stared out the window, watching cars, buildings, and street signs he passed. He wasn't completely out of his home yet, technically, but he considered himself to be. Most things didn't look as familiar anymore, and while that made him uncomfortable, he told himself he was ready. After a while of driving, the bus stopped, letting a few people off while others were climbing on. "Hey, come on, man, give me a break!" Arden heard some noise as the man was struggling to get on the bus. "I said no. Either you show me a ticket or you give me cash, or you don't enter," the bus driver argued. "Please, man, come on, I'm trying to get to the hospital. My wife's having a baby," the man complained. "Is that my fault? Get off!" The bus driver yelled, closing his doors on half the man's body as he squirmed trying to force his way in. "Aw, come on, let the poor guy in," some other folks started to complain. "Would you just get him off the bus already, Rodney? Come on," one of the regulars complained to the driver. "I'm trying. Listen, dude. If I have to get out of my chair, I'm using my fist. So make your decision," he warned him. Arden watched, frowning. They were holding up his progress. He was tempted to get up and do something if it continued. As much as he didn't want to get involved with dumb things, he couldn't have his time wasted. "Does anyone have a 20? Please, I'm desperate," the guy begged, glancing at everyone on the bus. A few people cussed at him, while others refused to make eye contact. He caught Arden's eyes and started speaking to him. "Hey, dude, come on, help a guy out," he asked. Rodney turned to look at Arden and then laughed. "That guy? You're gonna shake down a little fella like that? He probably has like 5 cents to his name. Come on, get out of here." Rodney started to push at the man's flailing limbs. I have money, Arden argued, glaring at the bus driver. A few people glanced up upon hearing him say that. $20, man, come on, the man asked again. Your money issues aren't my problem, though, Arden began saying. He had no reason to help this guy out, besides wanting to show that bus driver how dumb he looked for laughing at him. Besides, he needed all the money he had. I'll pay you back, I promise! Come on! You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours! The guy begged again. Oh, come on, that's enough out of you, Rodney said. He got up and shoved the guy out of his door. A few of his passengers began laughing and clapping, while others looked upset with it. The bus driver began driving forward again. While Arden sat there looking out the window, he could see the man chase the bus for a while, before finally giving up. Arden relaxed back into his chair. That situation and individual didn't matter, but for some reason, he had a tiny part of himself that wondered if that was the right thing to do. He had to work pretty hard to even get here. It was still a challenge with every step forward he got, so he didn't think he needed to give handouts. At the same time, it made him think of someone else that had been on his mind heavily. The question in his head was asking if he was acting like them. He hated getting into that way of thinking. It just sent him into a spiral of the past. Too many questions to ask. He already had a major one answered, and it still made his stomach churn with a feeling of disappointment and shame. In some ways, he still didn't want to believe it, regardless of how obvious it was. He was still in shock, he guessed, but the denial was over. Finally, the bus screeched to another stop. Arden looked up from gently falling asleep. It was time to get off. It took a little longer to get there than Arden anticipated, but at least he got there before nightfall. Arden stood up along with a few others, shuffling to get out. He was bumped and shoved by shoulders as he walked, people gruffly telling others to get out of their way, and just rudely pressing forward. Get off me! Arden grumbled, trying to push past them. He struggled, dragging his luggage with him. Move it! Another voice spoke up. He kicked at Arden's bags while Arden had been struggling at getting both them and himself out the door. Keep your foot off my stuff! Arden barked, snatching his backpack. Other people flooded off around him as he was out of the way, while the tall and lanky man he'd been yelling at stopped. He took his earpiece out and glared down at Arden. Keep your bags out of my way, he fussed back, kicking it again. This time so hard, Arden was forced to let go of the handle, sitting his luggage down the sidewalk they were stopped in front of. That's real mature of you. I've seen more poison than an 8-year-old, Arden sassed back. You want to see mature? The guy responded, quirking up an eyebrow. He quickly kicked Arden's second bag, causing it to roll off into the street. Arden watched in shocked horror as his bag went off into the normally busy street. One bag was a little ways down the side strip they were on, while the other was laying helplessly in the middle of the road. At least 4 lanes of where cars would be driving. He made a quick decision to run for it, as the cars had stopped briefly thanks to the crossing sign. Arden swiftly grabbed his handle. He could feel his heartbeat picking up. Things had happened so quickly, but even more so he was angry. He felt embarrassed and mad. When he looked up, he noticed the guy was still there with a dumb smirk on his face. Without thinking, Arden threw up his middle finger at him. You stupid idiot! He complained loudly, baring his teeth in a snarl of anger. After having been around so many dumb people, Arden thought he wouldn't be surprised by anyone's behavior anymore, but here he was, astonished. Arden yanked his luggage along with him. He watched as the brown-haired man who kicked it had started going on down the street. He wasn't going to chase him, it would be a waste, but somehow he felt a twinge in the back of his head that pushed him to do something more to him. Arden barely got back on the curb when the light switched and cars started whizzing by again. Arden looked around. He eyed where his other bag had ended up and went for it. He slowed up briefly, watching the same guy give it a playful nudge with his foot. He looked over his shoulder, laughing at Arden a bit before sticking his earpiece back in and continuing his walk. Without thinking about it much, Arden's pace picked up. He didn't know if he was going to catch up with the guy or his luggage. He was going quickly, feeling that pump of adrenaline spread across his chest. The man barely noticed, as whatever he was listening to, accompanied by the noise of the city, was distracting. He glanced at the busy cars, then back at the man. A thought caressed Arden's brain in that moment. He was just close enough. Push him.